Welcome to Inclusion Matters, a podcast about children's development from the Center for Inclusive Childcare. Welcome to Inclusion Matters, a podcast from the Center for Inclusive Childcare. I'm Priscilla Weigel, the Executive Director, and I'm here today with one of our recurring guests, Sarah Hawley, who is a public health nurse and really spends all of her days supporting childcare providers across the state of Minnesota as a public health nurse, nurse consultant, and her company does that across the state. And we are working with her to really help all of you out there as our listeners understand some of those common things that come up in the childcare setting and to be able to have some useful answers and tools so that you can be better equipped to do your job and have better days for yourself and, of course, for the most important thing in your care, those precious children. So welcome, Sarah. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always nice to be with you.
And today we're going to talk about a very favorite subject that I think is a personal favorite of mine, and also I think a really important, critical subject, active supervision in the childcare setting. How do we keep kids safe when there might be some challenges like meltdowns or, children who really are having a difficult time? And so today we're going to spend some time talking about active supervision and what that actually means, and then also some strategies to really put things in place so that when you are prepared, the challenges won't hopefully occur. So, Sarah, why don't you start with telling us a little bit more about active supervision?
Yeah, sure. So active supervision really it really requires focused attention, intentional observation of children at all times. It's something where staff will position themselves so that they can observe all children. They watch, they count, they listen at all times. Mm-hmm. And then during transition, staff account for all children with name-to-face recognition. They visually identify each child. They also use their knowledge of each child's development and abilities to anticipate ahead of time what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. Then they get involved and redirect when necessary. And this is going to help to prevent unwanted behavior such as meltdowns. It's really the most effective strategy for creating a safe environment and preventing injuries in young children. It transforms supervision from a passive approach to an active skill. And I think that's really important. Staff use the strategy to make sure that all children of all ages can explore their environment safely. And each program can keep children safe by teaching all staff how to look, listen, engage. And keeping children safe should really be the top priority. Right. And this active supervision is going to benefit not only the children, but the staff as well.
That's for sure. And I think, too, when you think about active supervision and the awareness of that and all those things you just mentioned, there's a lot of things that early childhood professional needs to be balancing in their day-to-day work with young children, because you have a diverse group of kids, you have varying needs and abilities, but you also, as a professional, should be able to articulate what you are doing to parents, because as you noted, safety and security is that immediate and most important need for families when they're choosing a childcare setting. They want to know, are you going to keep my child safe, and how are you going to do that? So I think the facet of this active supervision piece is to really to make sure that the full staff is able to articulate what it is, what we do, how we do it, when a parent comes in and asks, too, to be reassuring to that family.
Right. And we really coach childcare staff on sort of 6 strategies to put active supervision in place. And these are going to allow children to explore their environment safely. Infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, they have to be directly supervised at all times. So this includes daily routines such as, when they sleep, when they're eating, when diapering, toileting, in the bathroom use, everything. So a child's never left unattended. So we go through 6 different strategies that we really kind of coach programs on so that they can really put the active supervision into practice.
That's great. So where do you usually start? What's your first step?
Yeah. So the first one, step number 1, is setting up the environment. So staff will set up the environment so that they can supervise children so that they're accessible at all times. So when activities are grouped together, When furniture is at waist height or even shorter, adults are always able to see and hear children. Small spaces are kept clutter-free. Big spaces are set up so that children have clear play spaces so that staff can observe them at all times. So it really starts with the childcare environment first off.
Right.
The next thing is I kind of mentioned this in the intro, but staff positioning themselves. So they carefully plan where they are in the environment to prevent children from harm. So they'll place themselves so that they can see and hear all the children in their care. They make sure that there are always clear paths to where children are playing, sleeping, eating, so that they can react really quickly and get to them when necessary. And then staff always stay close to the children who may need additional support, and their location is going to help them provide that support when and if necessary.
Yeah. As you think about that positioning piece, it really becomes, when you think about it and plan ahead for those types of things, it does become second nature for the staff. I mean, it's just this flow that occurs day to day. Everybody knows where they need to be. Everyone knows where there needs to be an adult. And that's just something that the whole staff team in that classroom knows that they need to be watching and counting and being able to see everything that's going on.
Right, absolutely. And it really becomes second nature once it's put into practice, but it is a really important component of training the staff and getting them all on the same page with it. But like you said, once it's put into practice, it's second nature, and it's not something that you really even notice.
Yeah.
So then after positioning staff, like you mentioned, thanks for the lead in, we talk about scanning and counting. So staff are always able to account for the children in their care. So they continuously scan the environment. They know where everyone is and what they're doing, and then they count the children frequently. And this is especially important with counting during transitions when children are moving from one location to another, just to make sure that, they continuously have everyone. They started with 10, they transition with 10, that sort of thing.
Yes. Oh, I know that counting piece is so important in those transitions. And I think people, when you think about like even going on leaving the building is a whole nother thing, like going on a field trip and all that, but just leaving one space to another, going from the hallway, your classroom door to the playground, or if you're a family childcare provider, taking the kids outside and making sure that they all come with you and that you don't have a straggler back or someone who ducks into another doorway or, and that alertness and that counting is so critical.
It's critical, and it never stops. I just had a 9th grader who went on a church confirmation field trip, and the leader of it was scanning and counting. Like, I watched her, and she had a checklist with all the kids' names and continuously, because when you're out in a public place, you got to make sure you've got everyone.
Right. That's for sure.
And then the other thing is the listening component. So specific sounds or even the absence of sounds can be concerning. That can signify, like there's a problem. So staff who listen closely to children immediately identify signs of potential danger. And, they can systematically implement additional strategies to safeguard children. Things such as you see like bells on doors or alarms on doors are added to help alert staff when a child leaves or when they enter the room. So the listening component is really important as well.
Yeah. One thing about the listening, Sarah, too, and what you brought up about the absence of sounds, because we know in a busy classroom or a busy childcare setting, noise is a given. You should be hearing a lot of laughter and play, but when it's too quiet or you've noticed that a few voices have gone silent, you need to go check out where those 2 people or 3 or whatever are, because, the absence of that is really could be concerning as well. And especially if you can't see the children who are missing.
Yep. You want to be able to see them and hear them as well. And like you said, when you can't, it might be a red flag. You need to check out what's going on.
Definitely.
And then we mentioned anticipating children's behavior. That is really important. So staff should really be using what they already know about each child's interests and skills to predict what they may or may not do. Staff can create challenges that children are ready for and support them in succeeding, but they can also recognize when children might wander off, they might get upset, or they might take a risk and engage in some risky behavior. The other thing that we train staff in too is to do like a daily health check in the morning. And this doesn't need to be anything really formal and complex, but it might be something as simple as when the child gets dropped off in the morning to ask the parents, how was their night? How did they sleep? Did they get their normal sleep? Did they have breakfast? Are they hungry? What type of the mood are they in? That sort of thing. Are they feeling okay? Just like a very simple, it can be pretty informal,
Yeah.
just a little daily health check, but that can really kind of cue you in as well. Just knowing about that lack of sleep or food, that's really going to inform the staff's observations and help them anticipate the children's behavior.
Yes.
And I just think that staff who know what to expect are going to be able to better protect children from potential danger or harm.
Definitely. And that also, is just reinforcing the fact that we really try to stress so much in our coaching work with providers is to really have that built-in positive communication with families so that it is something, that natural flow back and forth. They're going to share with you when something is off, because if a child has had a terrible night's sleep and didn't eat breakfast, it's probably going to be a really hard day, because they're going to come into a group setting with a lot of other personalities, and their buttons are going to get pushed, and it might be challenging. So having a heads up about that is so important. I love that daily health check-in. It's important to do. And I think, as we think about what we've all been going through now with the pandemic, the challenge to connect with parents. Is there, and I know I'm throwing this out there to you, I didn't prepare you for this question at all, but what have providers been doing when they can't necessarily stay that connected, during those times when parents aren't allowed to come into the building, or, how have you seen some creative ways that providers have tried to stay connected?
Yeah, a lot of it has been, not so much now. Now things are slowly shifting back to normal, but in the height of the pandemic, a lot of it was outdoor quick drop. But a lot of programs would still have a clipboard outside with the parents to fill something out, like slept, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., had breakfast, yes or no, like a quick check. And there are a lot of programs too that use electronic methods of this now too,
Sure.
so that parents can enter it, and then the staff people see it on their tablet or whatnot, so they could communicate that way. So I think that still has been going on, but there's nothing like that face-to-face communication when a parent actually brings in the child, and the staff person or the teacher or whatnot can greet them and ask them about their night and their morning, and parents can fill them in, just like who if something's going on, parents can kind of nudge the teacher along with like a little hint of something.
Right, definitely. Yes. And it also, helps build that community sense of the teacher cares about the family and is understanding of the fact that if that child didn't sleep, odds are the parent didn't sleep either. So they're going to have
Right.
kind of a tough day. So reassuring them, oh my gosh, you're probably wiped out, or just building that partnership is so important.
Absolutely. And just knowing about other things, like their sibling might be home ill, or we've had this going through the family, or hey, we're leaving on vacation, we've got a big trip tomorrow. Just, anything that's going on
Yeah.
is key. Yeah, it's just going to help the staff and really everyone just anticipate what might happen. And then the next thing that we talk about that's really important is engaging and redirecting. So they use what they know about each child's needs and development to offer support. So staff will wait until children are unable to problem solve themselves.
Yeah.
And then they get involved. They can offer different levels of assistance or redirection depending on each individual child's needs. So that's really big too.
Oh, yeah. And so you really have to know the kids in your care to be able to be that person who is able to anticipate, know how they're going to react to a possible challenge or frustration, be nearby as a support, especially those who maybe tend to reach that frustrated point a little sooner than maybe some of their peers. They're going to be where you're going to have that, depending on the activity. All those pieces that you were listing here, the different components for let's say just free play, to just say, okay, we know if Josie's over in that area, sometimes people get frustrated because the Legos don't all fit, and she likes the people a lot, and sometimes those people are really fast and they're gone and she won't get her favorite one. So can somebody head over there and head it off at the pass before it reaches to that escalated point?
Yeah, Absolutely. So yeah, just kind of knowing a heads up on that is going to help so much. And then, then they get involved. The staff will get involved when, things start to escalate or whatnot, or when the child needs some assistance. And then that's when redirection becomes so important too, when the staff does have to get involved. And redirecting just usually guides children to the more appropriate behavior. So it can be a verbal or a physical, just very matter of fact instruction or a cue that guides the child away from the challenging behavior, and then it's going to re-engage them with appropriate activities. And it really, it provides positive attention to the desired material or activity. So it's just redirecting them.
Yeah.
And I think with redirection too, it can be used. I know it's used frequently throughout the days in childcare, but when a child's off task, if they're using a material inappropriately, perhaps they're talking out of turn, or even like you kind of mentioned, if there's something pushed their buttons for whatever reason, maybe the toy they wanted wasn't available, if they're starting to get upset or agitated, that's a perfect time to redirect them. And redirecting can be verbal, it could be, physical, just, scooching them over to a new area, redirecting them just with a simple cue, or even just, redirecting them with proximal attention. And a lot of times verbal just will work as well.
Yeah. And just having them, just calling their name to just break the pattern of where they're staring and where they're headed can be, the beginning of, redirecting that attention off of the task that might cause some challenges ahead.
Right. And it can be very simple, and it's usually really effective. And really, I always think too, I kind of just mentioned this, that redirection is used a lot, but sometimes if it's being used a lot throughout the day, it might need too that the staff need to kind of reevaluate, it might mean that maybe you need to increase the time and attention to appropriate behavior, restating behavioral expectations in advance, establishing those rules and routines, maybe reviewing those again, using visual cues of the expected behavior, just reemphasizing social skills, appropriate social skills, and then just making sure that you're providing variation, like with high interest materials and activities, so that children aren't, getting bored, that sort of thing. So I think you got to think about too, like, gosh, what's going on? We're redirecting nonstop. Maybe it's time to reevaluate with that too, and just kind of look at everything that's going on.
Right. Because we as adults, it's easier for us to change and adapt than expect, young children to be able to manage all of that with their developing systems of emotions and social cues. They're all practicing and still trying to learn. Well, as we kind of think about so you've talked really great about how we set the stage for helping things really go well and preparing for that. What if things aren't going well? What are some things that you see as strategies for when sometimes those perfect plans don't always fit into place? What are some things that you've noticed that really are critical?
Yeah. I think one thing that I feel is really important and seems to work well in our consultations with childcare staff is to have a plan ahead of time. So to train staff, like, what is the plan? What methods of redirection do you use? That sort of thing. And if there is a child, with some known, behavior challenges or that sort of thing, to have a plan in place ahead of time, like how we work through that and, what works for the child. What do we do? The other thing is, one thing is to look at, does the child have a sense of belonging in the classroom? How do they feel about their place being in there, and really honoring that they are a part of the classroom. Mm-hmm. So I think, thinking about all of those things ahead of time, and then, maybe making that plan and training staff. Also using empathy, I think, goes a long way with kids too. Like, that was a really hard situation. That was really hard, when someone took your toy or whatnot, mm-hmm. And really verbalizing that and working through that with the child. And then I think other things like, if a child is having a, meltdown or whatnot, do you have extra staff that can come into the classroom? That can be challenging because there's not always extra staff, but when and if there is, could they come in and be with the other children while you help the child who's having the challenging behavior?
Yeah.
So utilizing extra staff, or engaging children like in a meaningful activity, they're doing this so that they're engaged and busy while you are attending to the other child to make sure that their needs are met, would be another thing.
And making sure, I think when you think about, redirecting, even going back to our earlier point, having that calming area, I know we talked about this too, is just, even inside the classroom that is accessible to all children, helping kids know they can go there when they need it, and that they can start to learn when their body needs that calming before it gets to that meltdown point or that overly frustrated point, and providing them a setting over in that quiet, calming area that has, squishy toys, maybe, headsets to listen to calming CDs or story tapes, or no, they're not tapes, but you know what I mean, CDs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But having options for them to take a moment and withdraw from the overly excited, noisy, possible situation that's causing them to feel overwhelmed.
Yes, I totally agree. To have that sort of calming area where that child knows that they can safely chill somewhere in the classroom. And that's the other thing with, if you do bring extra staff to come in and help, when and if that's available, make sure that they come into the classroom, to work with the other children while you are with the child needing help. Don't take the child out of the classroom. But like you mentioned, just having that area already set up that everyone is, in the classroom aware that this is our chill area, our safe space area that they can go to, and having them, like you said, the squishy toys and that sort of thing, that calming chill area, just them knowing that that is available to them and that is there, I think is definitely is going to help as well.
Yes. And we, on our website, for those of you listening, we have some great sensory brochures just supporting children with sensory needs in the early childhood setting. And in that brochure, it lists all the different ways that you can set up and what you need for a really quality sensory area to be able to provide that opportunity for children. And our coaches also are very well versed in helping providers plan for, as you said, having that behavior plan, planning ahead. And when you're able to anticipate and you're able to plan for things and everyone knows those next steps, it doesn't push people to the brink of frustration, kids and grownups. I think sometimes we go immediately to calling the parent to come if the child's having a difficult time. Well, you're suspending that child by sending them home early, and you're asking that parent to leave work and come and pick up their child. Or you tell the family, you just can't come back for a period of days. That's another common thing that sometimes happens because everyone has kind of reached their breaking point. And so when you plan ahead, you can all sit together, maybe not at the same time, but you can talk about it together over the course of a few days with the family. Really that I can't stress that enough, is having the family involved and their input as well, to plan for situations that may occur and to all kind of make a pact that we're going to get through it together in partnership. We're not going to expel and we're not going to suspend. We're going to really try to work for positive outcomes for the child.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, I think of the last podcast we did when we were talking about children with special health needs, like let's say they have a food allergy or something, that was one of the things that we really emphasized, is having that plan in place ahead of time and sitting down with the parents ahead of time and going through and making a plan, like what are their triggers of their food allergy and stuff, what things they need to avoid. This really isn't that much different. And it really should be that open communication and partnership to have that meeting with the parents and have everything in place. And that's going to help the family, the staff, and the child, and just limit the amount of frustration when something, does happen that, we've made this plan. This is the plan. We know what to do. Here's the steps we're going to take. We're all in it together. That's going to help the child and all of the staff there too. I think really decrease some of the frustration versus not having a plan. And then something happens and then everyone's frustrated to the brink, and, you've got other children to care for. So then everything just kind of spirals. So planning ahead of time and making all the staff aware of it, and having that collaborative effort between, director of the program, families, and the staff. It's huge. It's invaluable.
Yep, I agree. That's the key. And I think, at the core of all of this is really understanding the why behind behaviors and taking the time to plan ahead. And so thank you, Sarah, for being with us. I loved this conversation. I know it was very helpful to our listeners, and I look forward to having you back as we continue to kind of navigate some of those hot topics related to health and safety in the early childhood setting. For our listeners who would like more information about other health and safety topics, you can certainly go to our website, inclusivechildcare.org, and we have other podcasts by Sarah. We also have a podcast that we did with Dr. Chris Gendro, a pediatrician, about just some of those health reasons for behavior too, which it was a really helpful topic. So Sarah, we look forward to having you back again. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. For more resources, visit us at inclusivechildcare.org.